Welcome to Educating the Black Child, everyone. My name is Hadari Davis. We are Edutainment for Equity. We are very excited to have you all here for this interdisciplinary conversation about educating Black children. I'm your host, Hadari Davis, and I'm joined behind the scenes by my wife, Candace, and probably by our children at some point because they like to climb on laps and peek in the Zooms. This event is brought to you by Edutainment for Equity, which is an award-winning consulting company, that specializes in creating transformative experiences and innovative experiences that affirm an equitable future. We're celebrating our 10th year and celebrating it in a variety of ways. And so for more information, please visit our website, edutainmentforequity.com. Contact us and let us know how we can support your work as agents for change. We have a lot going on, so check out the link tree, check out our website, join the fun, join the party, all right? We love to have new clients. We love to interact with new people. We love to engage new communities in this conversation about bettering the education of Black children. We always begin our events first by acknowledging the First Nation territory from which we are broadcasting. We are in the land of the Ohlone people in the Confederated Nations of Lashawn, commonly known as Oakland, California. We want to honor those ancestors whose legacy we take advantage of every day, those who are buried in the mounds and hills around our home, in recognition of their victimization to the settler colonial project and their proximity to the ancestors of African people. We present this acknowledgement of our respect, our appreciation, and our bearing witness to their lives. We know they are still here, both in spirit and in the flesh, and we honor their presence in these lands. I want to encourage all of you to name the lands you are in the chat and the peoples of who those lands and ancestors lived before colonization. We love to welcome those spirits into the space. So if you know what lands you're in, what indigenous peoples founded the lands in which you're in, please put their names in the chat. Acknowledge them, bear witness to them. This is a reminder to us that the indigenous people of this land, the land occupied by the people of the United States of America, are still here. Their ancestors are still buried here, and their presence is a witness to the juxtaposition that the existence of this nation poses. That is, democracy and freedom at the expense of the lives and memory of those who were here before. So it is in their memory that we salute them through this acknowledgement, not only of their lasting contributions to the past, but their lasting example for all of us moving forward towards justice and equity in the future. We at E4E stand in solidarity with Indigenous people, not as a performance, but in concrete action, and honor the contribution they have made to our well-being and the well-being of all American people. This is spoken in their honor. Thank you for sharing those names. We also want to honor the ancestors of Black children and Black educators, especially those who committed their lives to the upliftment of Black people, educators, teachers, scholars, activists whose work and intention created the space for this conversation to happen over the past 5 years. In the spirit of this libation, we always like to call their names, especially the names of those who have passed. We call Mary McLeod Bethune, Carter G. Woodson, W.E.B. Du Bois. We welcome you to type the names of ancestors in the chat that you would like to have present with us in this conversation today. We want to encourage you to invite these Egun in and charge you at the end of this conversation to remember them, thank them, and invite them to leave. Yeah? So with that, please drop the names of those ancestors, those Black educators, the ancestors of Black people that contributed to the upliftment of Black life. We would love to have them present in our conversation today. So thank you for the acknowledgements. Thank you for these names. And let me end this moment with a word of peace, which is the word Ashe. Our examination of the education of Black children is really an interrogation of the future of Black people. We recognize that the very survival of African people around the world and in this country is dependent on the quality of the education that Black children receive. This is an Alicia Wormsley shout out to this art that she spread around the country to remind us that there are Black people in the future and that we're actually educating those Black people. Before we introduce our renowned guest, Dr. Juwanza Kunjufu, we want to orient ourselves to the challenges and the triumphs of Black children in these times. So we want to start by considering what's happening in the Bay Area, the challenges that are happening in California, because that's where we are. And for those of you who are linking in from other places, this is a little window into some of the challenges that Black children and Black educators are facing in the Bay Area. We're dealing with school closures at the level that that dramatically impact Black children, families, and communities. The schools that are slated to be closed are community schools, and the response from the community has been sit-ins, has been hunger strikes, has been movements of solidarity, even rogue summer schools, just to make sure that these schools are not closed. It's a continuing challenge and issue that anyone in Oakland who deals with schools is aware of. And then we have San Francisco, racial insensitivity coming from the school board, a recall election that removed some folks from the school board. There's a lot of volatility in San Francisco with regard to the education of Black children, the education of all children. But it seems that whenever there are these types of conflicts, they inordinately impact Black children and Black life. We're looking at our analysis of the National Department of Education. Here's data about how Black girls are 5 times more likely than white girls to be suspended and at least 4 times as likely to be arrested. So now we're dealing with the challenges that our children and our families are facing with the criminal justice system in our schools. We have a teacher gap. We have a tremendous teacher gap across the country. It's impacting teaching in California as well. We know research says that Black teachers make a difference, especially for Black boys, but also for Black girls, that Black teachers make a difference. And yet we don't have a lot of Black teachers. In fact, in California alone, more than 78,000 Black students are in schools with no Black teachers. So this is not just an issue for California, but this is an issue nationwide. And we can continue. 79% of public educators are white. Most of them are female. So what does it mean when our children, when that's the reality, that they have no Black teachers in their schools and the predominant identity of authority in their school is white women? We'll talk about that with Dr. Kunjufu. We also have this about when they teach us. When they teach us, we tend to get suspended at high rates. We tend to get expelled at high rates. When they teach us, we tend to not have the kinds of resources that are necessary for the elevation and education of our children. In fact, there's a $23 billion spending gap between non-white school districts and white school districts. All of this is to say that the institution is not working for Black people, it's actually working against Black people. And that's what this slide indicates, that even those who don't drop out, even those who remain, and Dr. Kunjufu's done a tremendous amount of research around what happens to children in the 4th grade. But let's just saying that we feel free until we not free, until some aspect of our imagination, our creativity, our self-esteem is taken from us. And part of that is by the lack of models, not just classroom teachers and administrators, but also what's in the books, what's in the text, what we're actually studying in science class and math class, what we're actually experiencing in English class and our language arts classes. And just to be clear, if all the reference points are white or are not consistent with the children who are sitting in the classroom, then this is the kind of thing that can happen to the mind, ideological incarceration. There's also bans. Like, in the face of all of that, there are these a lot of right-wing work to shut down the teaching of race, to shut down the teaching of Black history, and the impact that that has on our children, right? The impact that it has on our learning spaces. And some of this kind of indicates what that is. Even children being persecuted for how they wear their hair or for how their names are pronounced. All of these are challenges that Black children face, and they all relate to this hegemonic attitude towards Black history, towards being critical about the racial history of the United States, analyzing that, studying that. There is an effort to whitewash that, to white that out. And the question is why? What is so dangerous? What is motivating these politicians and policymakers to attempt to erase this conversation? And maybe it's related to the 2020 census, which showed that the US population is much more multiracial, more racially and ethnic diverse than it's ever been measured in the past. That people of color represented 43% of the total US population in 2020, and that number is increasing, which is placing a pressure on those who are intent on protecting white hegemony and using the schools as a tool to protect that hegemony into the future by limiting the possibilities of Black children. When we hear that, this is what we hear. Like when we hear, we don't want critical race theory, we don't want your hairstyles, we don't want Black studies and those kinds of analyses in our schools, this is what we hear. And this is often what we see. We see this in school board meetings, we see this in the halls of Congress, we see this coming out of the mouths of people in educational institutions. Okay, Dr. Kunjufu. We about to jump in, y'all. We about to jump in. So I hope you're ready. I want to give you this bio of Dr. Kunjufu and just let you know a little bit about who he is, what he's done for our people. Dr. Juwanza Kunjufu is a renowned writer, educator, and publisher that's dedicated his career to addressing the ills affecting Black culture in the United States. He's authored over 40 books, including national bestsellers. He's been a guest speaker at most universities throughout the US. He's been a consultant to most urban school districts. He's inspired countless young people like myself to become educators and to commit to the education of Black children. His classic book, The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, is a seminal text, especially informing rites of passage and male achievement programs around the country. His latest books have been focused both on parenting and education for Black girls. He's the foremost expert in the subject of our conversation, the education of Black children. Dr. Kunjufu, welcome to our program.
Good to see you, Odari.
It's great to have you here. We've been
and let me say this.
Yes.
I started my career in 1974. I've never missed a speech or a day's work in over 49 years, but I've never heard someone as comprehensive as you describe the plight of our children. I don't know what to say. Literally, we could have a benediction at this point. You covered all the bases. There's nothing more for me to say.
I don't believe that. I think
I just want to commend you, Odar. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. I think for our guests, part of having a morning event is just trying to get everybody on the same page, right? Trying to get us all to be in one conversation. I know 11 o'clock, it's like you drop off the kids, maybe you're at work, it's the middle of the day. There's a lot of other challenges that are pulling you away, email, text, everything. And we just want everybody to have a sense that they can be in this conversation and feel like they have enough background context to understand all of the gems that you're going to drop. And so for those in the audience out there, I just want to encourage you to take out your notebook, take out a pen, or take out your computer and be ready to write down these gems that Dr. Kunjufu is going to drop on us. So we ready, brother. We're ready for you. I want to start by just asking you, based on kind of what I did, I guess, can you help contextualize what Black children and Black parents are facing in getting a quality education for their children?
Well, let me respond to your question with this question to the participants. Which group has the highest educational attainment in America?
Mm.
Would it be Asian, Jewish, white, African American, Hispanic, Native American, Indian, or other? Which group has the highest educational attainment? White, Asian, Jewish, African American, Hispanic American, Native American, Indian, or other?
I'm seeing white, Asian, Jewish. I'm seeing Asian and Jewish. Someone said, I thought Nigerians were the most.
And there it is. There it is. Nigerian American.
Mm.
Now, what this shows is that you can overcome racism when you know your culture, when you know your history. Now, I just did something very unfair. I compared immigrants to slaves. I compared a group that voluntarily came here with their culture intact, with the people forced to come here, where their culture was taken from them. And then they're given February, the shortest month of the year, to learn their history and their culture. But I'm always looking for good news because the stats can become very frustrating. Like I said, I've been doing this since 1974, and it'd be very easy to become depressed and give up. So I'm always looking for positive stats, good research showing how we overcame a particular situation. For example, I'm a consultant to school districts, and they bring me in because Asians are scoring 1180, whites are scoring 1118, Hispanic Americans 987, and we're only scoring 945, a 200-point differential. In elementary school, whites and Asians between the 7th and 8th stay 9, Black and Hispanic youth between the 3rd and 4th stay 9. Now these school districts, Odari, bring me in because they think that the problem is with Black youth. They want me to fix Black students. So my question to them and to your participants, can anybody describe what's going on in Black homeschooling America? Can anybody tell me the success of parents who are homeschooling their children? Now remember, whites and Asians are between the 7th and 8th stay 9 on state exams. Black and Hispanic youth between the 3rd and 4th. Where are Black youth who are being homeschooled? Where are they scoring?
That's a great question. I would assume that they're scoring higher based on who's teaching them.
And you're correct. I just want to see more responses in the chat. But those children who are being homeschooled are scoring at the 82 percentile. There is no racial gap when Black children are taught by people who love them, who understand their learning styles, who bond with them. So there's no need to quote unquote fix Black children. What they need is an environment where they thrive.
Wow.
Let me ask another question. What happened in Black America in 1954? Now, Dar, you can't answer. Let's go into the chat. Let's see what they say. What happened in Black America in 1954? Someone just, Sakia says integration, civil rights movement. There it is from Tony, Brown versus Topeka. Now my question to the chat, did we make the right decision in 1954? Because since 1954, there's been a 66% decline in African-American teachers. We didn't have a shortage of Black teachers, of Black male teachers in 1954. That was created with this decision where Black schools closed, Black principals were demoted to become teachers, and Black teachers lost their jobs. So did we make the right decision?
I think that's a great question. I wonder, when we're thinking about the ramifications of that decision, in retrospect, did we make the right decision, right?
Would Du Bois's talented 10th believe that they made the right decision? For example, Jackie Robinson and the Negro Baseball League, we had 20 Black teams, Black owners, Black stadiums. But for some reason, the talented 10th thought it was better for Jackie Robinson to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers than to play for a Black team. So it was beneficial for a few, the talented 10, but for the masses of our people, it was suicidal. So the question we have to ask ourselves, does the talented 10th make decisions in the best interest of themselves, or the 90% representing the least of these?
I think for the younger generation who weren't necessarily present for that, for the struggle that it took to make that transition, all views of those decisions are in hindsight. They're all as the result of the life that I'm living today. And so I think for someone like my mom in her 80s, it's harder to say we made a wrong decision after you fought so hard to make it. It's much easier to say that for myself or those younger than me who did not march in those marches, who did not stand hand in hand in solidarity with those who were suffering, and who, you know, I'm a byproduct of integrated education. Most of our guests, our participants, I imagine, are byproducts of integrated education, for better or for worse.
So then we have to ask ourselves, is the future of the Black race in the hands of white female teachers?
Woo! That's a great question. I mean, I don't even know if that's a question.
Yeah, there's a statement in there somewhere, right?
I'm not even sure that's a question. There's definitely a statement in there somewhere.
And one of your graphs showed that there are buildings where there's not one Black male in the building. That's and right. If a Black male was in the building, I'm going to wager he's a custodian first, a security guard second, a PE teacher third, an administrator fourth. And if he's a classroom teacher, high school first, junior high second, middle school third, intermediate fourth, and K3 last. Let me challenge the group in the chat room. I'm willing to give you my latest book on Black boys, Changing School Culture for Black Males. If you can name 5 Black male teachers who teach K3, and don't make up names because Holy Spirit is listening and watching you.
K3.
K3.
Can you name 5 Black male teachers? Yeah.
Now, let me just say this while they're thinking of their names. I believe there are 3 critical grades for Black boys: kindergarten, 4th grade, and 9th grade. If you want to see God at his best, look at our boys in kindergarten. They sit in the front of the class. They're eager. They're curious. They're asking questions. They love learning. If you want to see Satan at his best, Look at our boys in ninth grade. They're sitting in the back of the class. They're not asking questions. They're tired. They're bored. They cheat on exams. They don't like to read. Now, I believe the grade in the middle is the most important grade of all, and that's fourth grade. For some strange reason, Odari, Black male scores decline after fourth grade. There are governors who now have pimped my research, and they determine prison growth based on fourth grade reading scores. It was not my desire to build prisons with this research. My desire was to get teachers to understand male learning styles, that they're oral, tactile, kinesthetic, and they're relational learners. To document as the age increases, peer pressure increases. As the age increases, gender learning differences are more pronounced. If you know that boys have a shorter attention span, what should teachers do differently with their lesson plan? Shorten the lesson. If you know they have a greater energy level, allow more movement, more activity in the classroom. Another question, have we designed a female classroom for large numbers of male students? Let me juxtapose that question with this question. If Brown versus Topeka was 1954, did we have special education in 1954? So what year was special education created? And why do they call it special? I'm waiting for some answers.
Why is special education called special?
And what year was special education created? And no one was able to give me 5 Black male teachers K-3. So the book I want you all to buy is Changing School Culture for Black Males. So what year was special education created, class? Doors just got locked. No one's getting out.
We've got 1970s. We've got 1960. We've got 1955.
Yeah, and there it is, Alexis, 1975. Is special education a dumping ground for male students? Notice I said male, because even white boys, Hodari, are placed in special ed more than white girls. There's a 2-to-1 ratio of white boys to white girls in special education. There's a 3-to-1 ratio of Black boys to Black girls in special education. The child with the least chance to be placed in special ed are white girls. Could that be because the predominance of white female teachers? Can anybody tell me the biggest drug dealer in America? Because it's not the mafia. It has something to do with special education. The biggest drug dealer in America, who is it?
Big Pharma is what we're getting. ADHD, American government, doctors.
The educational system. Schools are doping our children with Ritalin. The biggest drug dealer in America are American public schools. We were not giving children Ritalin in 1954 before Brown versus Topeka. And let me connect some dots. In 1922, how many pounds of sugar did the average American consume? In 1922, how many pounds of sugar did the average American consume? Class.
Less than 1 pound.
Very, very close. It was only 4 pounds of sugar. It is now 2022. How many pounds of sugar does the average American consume today per year?
Mm.
You think it's 4 pounds? Someone said 50. Let's add another number to that. It's 155 pounds of sugar. We could reduce special ed placement if we stop giving children Ritalin, reduce their sugar consumption, gave them PE on a daily basis, and gave more right brain lesson plans that met the needs of tactile and kinesthetic learners.
So let me ask you about, because you're talking about pre-Brown to post-Brown. So what are some of the lessons from the pre-Brown time that we have forgotten?
Well, the first one, I shouldn't say the first one, but one of the first ones that comes to my mind is Black Wall Street. Every child should be taught what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 1920s. They need to be taught the Harlem Renaissance. They need to be taught how Marcus Garvey organized 1 million Black people without social media. They need to understand the dichotomy, the debate between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. We need to understand the strength of HBCUs, especially during 1954, during that era. But even today, HBCUs only have 12% of Black college students. Can anybody tell me what percent of Black graduates come out of HBCUs with only 12% of the students? Do you think it's 12%? Do you think it's less? Do you think it's more?
I would
it's
say
30%. It gets better. If an African American graduates from a graduate school, 50% of them were undergraduates at an HBCU. 61% of all Black doctors, engineers, and lawyers did their undergraduate work at an HBCU. So you don't measure a school based on dollars. You measure schools based upon who is in front of the class, who loves you, who gives you high expectations, who mentors you, who cares about you, who understands your learning styles.
absolutely.
I'm a product of an institution called CIBI, C-I-B-I, the Council of Independent Black Institutions, that was created in the early 70s. These were private, independent Black schools that were created to teach our children the Nguzo Saba and Ma'at and Afrocentricity. Now, let me park there for a moment. I'm now spending 3 days a week nationwide, primarily working with white female teachers who are clueless on Black Wall Street, on Afrocentricity, on the Nguzo Saba, on Ma'at, on the Ma'afa. But CB schools were grounded in history and culture. Hodari, let me share this with you. When I graduated from college, I decided my father wanted me to work at Bank of America. I wanted to work for a CB school, an independent Black school. Hodari, do you have any idea what my starting salary CB school was?
Barely enough to live, I imagine.
And that's all it was. It was $400 a month. But they provided room and board. They provided lunch for us. But we were achieving our objective. We were educating Black children. We had our own farms. our own health food store, our own publishing company. It was a beautiful situation, but how long can you go on $400 a month? At some point, you need health insurance.
Right.
At some point, you need to send your child to Morehouse and Spelman. It's going to be very difficult doing that with $400 a month. So that's when I made the transition of using what I learned in CB and using those skills to implement those in public schools, and hopefully to help teachers try to teach our children to love themselves and not believe that being smart is acting white, that good hair is long and straight, and pretty eyes are anything but dark brown. So I owe my entire career to CB, but the challenge has been trying to create African-centered chartered schools that are financed by Pharaoh. You can't expect Pharaoh to finance an African-centered charter school.
Pharaoh won't fund our liberation. Pharaoh won't fund the liberation from Pharaoh.
No, he won't. And let me say this, in one of my earlier books, Black Economics, last year we earned $2 trillion. Can anyone in the chat room tell me what percent of the $2 trillion did we spend with Black businesses? There it is. Hylick answered the question, 3%. Question, what percent of white income is spent with Black businesses?
0.
So we give 97% of our income to white businesses, and they give less than 3% to ours. You're not going to grow a Black community with those kind of numbers.
Yeah, this picture I have on the screen with you and Huey P. Newton and Ishmael Reed, which is a reference to what Davey was talking about in our conversation on Hard Knock Radio the other day, how influential this moment was for many of us who saw it. Your talk, your presentation, the things that you had to say, and the fact that you were sitting next to Huey. I think this is 1988, but
that was my older brother. That wasn't me.
It inspired us to see more, to see more possibility. It was after this that things like Hawk Federation and the Simba program and what has evolved now into African American male achievement programs and et cetera. But it was part in relation to this conversation in 88, 89, as college students, we started volunteering in schools. By 1990, we were literally working as substitute teachers or student teachers or in after school programs, and we were still in college. But a lot of that was being inspired by this conversation and the things that came out of this conversation.
And look at you now, Dar. You're still on the battlefield. You're still very consistent and committed to the liberation of our children. And you and your wife need to be commended for your stability and consistency to our struggle.
I think a lot of times, and you said it earlier, the statistics can be overwhelming. They can make you feel like progress is not being made. So I would love if you could talk a little bit about the triumphs and the effective strategies that you've seen throughout your career, the programs that were working, the institutions that were effective. What can you share with us about what's effective, what effective institutions look like for our children?
Well, I recommended in my keynote speech in 1985 at NABSE, the National Association of Black School Educators. I recommended a need for single gender classrooms and single gender schools. And two groups gave me pure hell: the ACLU that still resisted, and the NOW organization, the group of white feminists. But the feminists now are in favor of single gender classrooms and schools because they've been frustrated for years that white girls have outperformed white boys, K-12, and even at the collegiate level, but white boys still make more money. But the research shows when females study STEM, science careers in detail, they thrive. So since 1985, when I gave that speech, there's been over 1,000 single gender Black male classrooms, over 150 Black male single gender schools. Two of our best are the Eagles Academy in New York and in Newark. There's a group called COSBOC, Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color, representing over 100 of these schools. And most of these schools, Hodari, on the first day of school, let's say it's a high school, they have one sheet of paper on all the boys' desks. Can anybody tell me, does anyone have any idea what this one sheet of paper on the first day of school in inner city Oakland, inner city Chicago, inner city New York, what is the only sheet of paper these freshmen see on their desk on the first day of school? Any idea? Someone said sports tryout. No. I want to see you after class. Can we get some other answers? It's a college application to Morehouse. One of the ways I avoid burning out, I try to visit the house at least once a year to see over 3,000 Black male students with a median ACT of 26, a median SAT of over 1,200, a median GPA of 3.5, an institution where Black males thrive, the only Black male college in America. And all of our boys need to take a field trip to the house so they can see Black men who are academically engaged, who love learning, who work together and collaborate with one another. Over the years, Hodari, back to your original question, success stories, there's over 1,000 rites of passage programs that we didn't have in 1988 when I was on that show with Dr. Huey Newton. Over 700 male mentoring programs, Saturday academies. So these are just some of the benefits over the years that we've seen. Now, there's no question, there's also been an increase in gangs, in crime, in drug abuse, in incarceration. So we have to balance it out. But let me ask this question. Are there more Black males in prison, or are there more Black males in college? Hodari, you can't answer because I know you know the answer. Are there more in prison? Now, Tony gave the answer. I'm sorry. So Tony said college, but Freed said prison. Can I get a couple more answers? Is it college or is it prison? You're correct. There's 1 million Black males in prison. And 88% of them are there because they entered jail illiterate. You just missed that. If we teach Black boys how to read, we have an 88% chance of keeping them out of jail. We have a collection of books we want you all to have. It's titled Best Books for Boys. Boys are tired of reading Eurocentric books that have no connection with them and their culture. They want Afrocentric books that reinforce male history and male gender analysis. But back to the original point, there's 1 million Black males in prison. There are 1.4 million Black males in college. We broke another record this year and the media was silent. They love talking about the large numbers of Black males who are in jail, but they're silent about the 1.4 million Black males who are in college. Let's give it up Let's give it up. Let's give it up to the 1.4 million in college.
So earlier you said that our boys are in female-centered classrooms, or classrooms that are designed by and for the success of white women in particular. Can you talk more about that?
When we measured retention, how long will a student remember what they've learned in class? The lecture, they only remember 5% after 24 hours. If they read some material in class, it was 10%. If they had a demonstration, it was 75%. If they taught others, it was 90%. Children learn in different ways, but large numbers of Black students are right brain learners. Lectures and ditto sheets and Eurocentric textbooks are not the best way to teach African students. A better way to teach would be make the lesson tactile, kinesthetic, oral, and understand that Black children are relational learners. Let me elaborate. There can be no significant learning until we first establish a significant relationship. Now, I'm a little older than most of the audience. I was in kindergarten in 1858. Some of y'all caught that and some of y'all didn't. 1858. My kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Avery. First grade, Mrs. Collins. Second grade, Mrs. Burke. Third grade, I had a Black male teacher, Mr. Payne. Fourth grade, Mrs. Hudson. Fifth grade, Ms. Allen. Sixth grade, Mrs. Butler. She was so good, I skipped seventh grade with the Mrs. Foote for eighth grade. How many of you right now could write down the names of your kindergarten through eighth grade teachers? I had some of the best. And one of our mission statements, Odari, if the student has not learned, then the teacher has not taught. See, today's teachers want to blame it on the income in the home, the number of parents in the home, the race of the children. But in high achieving schools, in spite of poverty, in spite of single parenting, in spite of the race of the child, there are over 90 schools in America. We call these 90-90-90. 90% Black, 90% poor, but a test score 90% or greater. I'd rather do more research on the 90-90-90 than the thousands of schools that want to blame poverty. One of my earlier books is titled An African-Centered Response to Ruby Payne's Poverty Theory. Educators love blaming factors they have no control over. What can a teacher do about the income of his or her students? Absolutely nothing. What can they do about fatherlessness in the home? Absolutely nothing. But Odari, even in the poorest achieving school in Oakland, there's at least one teacher who has his or her children above the national average. I'd rather emphasize what that one teacher is doing in that school than to look at the 95% of the teachers who aren't doing anything but blaming external factors.
That's relevant for all of us who work in the after-school setting or the beyond school setting. Just recognize that there are things that are outside of your control, but that doesn't necessarily limit the possibility of what is inside of your control.
Exactly. And let me say this. There are 6 types of teachers. First of all, we have custodians. These are the ones that graduated in 1992 using the same lesson plans 30 years later. Then we have referral agents. They don't teach, they refer. The research shows, Odari, 20% of the teachers make 80% of the referrals for suspension and special ed. Then we have missionaries who believe our children are culturally deprived. They believe I got mine and you got yours to get. Then we have instructors who believe they teach subjects, not children. And remember, from the 4th grade on, we have more instructors who believe they're teaching math and not Black students. And then we have master teachers. They understand subject matter like an instructor, but they also understand you can't teach a child that you don't understand their learning styles. And then we have coaches. They understand subject matter, they understand pedagogy, but they also understand you can't teach a child you have not bonded with. Please write down those 6 types of teachers: custodians, referral agents, instructors, missionaries, master teachers, and coaches. Unfortunately, Odari, in low achieving schools, we have more custodians, referral agents, missionaries, and instructors. There's research, Odari, documenting 2 consecutive years of an ineffective teacher could destroy a child for life. Hear me. 2 consecutive years of an ineffective teacher could destroy a child for life. Now, because I'm always the optimist, I reverse that. What that also means is 2 consecutive years with a master teacher, with a coach, could produce a scholar. Can anybody in the chat room tell me what is looping? What is looping? I'm waiting. Looping. 2 years with the same teacher. So, Dar, nationwide, we've been imploring principals to give us your 20 most challenging Black male students who come from a low-income home, a fatherless home, a Black home, but let's give them 2 consecutive years with a master teacher. And if they're really serious, let's go 1st grade and 2nd grade with a master teacher, 3rd and 4th with another master teacher, 5th and 6th with another master teacher, 7th and 8th with another master teacher. And you'll see the problem was never with our children. It was always the classroom teacher.
Woo! For all of y'all who have these programs that get mandated to rotate children in and out after 1 semester, after 1 year, just understand how much more effective the learning could be and the experience can be for the young people if you can double up, if you can have that, the longer you're with that child, if you have an effective relationship with the child and the family, the longer you're with that child, the more success they're going to see. That's something to consider when we're writing our yearly plans, when we're funding organizations and telling them they should switch children out after 1 year. The research says 2 consecutive years with an effective master teacher or coach can turn a child into a scholar. So we should do our best to try to lean into that kind of research. Yesterday, we had this conversation 2 days ago about strange fruit. You said 3 songs. So there's 3 songs: Strange Fruit, What's Going On, and 50 Cent and Sierra, Can't Leave Them Alone. So let's shed some light on that. Let's go there real quick.
All right. And I appreciate the lyrics that he put up on the screen for us. I tried that good boy, but that dope boy is turning me on. The message is in the music. What percent of the NBA is African American? 86%. What percent of the doctors are African American? African-American male. 2%. Sierra's message is clear. I tried that good boy. I tried that scholar. I tried the boy that likes math and science. But that dope boy is turning me on. Hodar, I call this dumbing down. Many Black males, even when they're recommended for gifted and talented, for AP classes, they shy away from them because they want to be down with their friends and they want to be accepted by their girlfriends. Black women seem to be giving a message here. On the one hand, they say later on in life, in their 30s and 40s, they want a scholar. But when they're in their teens and early 20s, they're real clear. They want a dope boy, not a good boy. So my question to connect with this, how many Black male doctors and engineers have we lost to these types of lyrics? Where in Oakland, where in California, where nationwide can Black boys go where they can be comfortable in their own skin to pursue math and science? Black males need a haven to become scholars. When I ask Black males, what are the 3 best ways to get paid? What are their answers? When I ask them, what are the 3 best ways to get paid in the chat room, what are their 3 answers? Sports, music, and drugs. Now, when I ask white boys, what are the 3 best ways to get paid? What do they say? Do they say sports, music, and drugs? What do white boys say? I see some of the answers. Investment, the stock market, entrepreneurship, and real estate. Now I'm going to give you my book, Black Economics. If you right now, without Googling the information, can tell me what is Rule 72. See, white boys are taught Rule 72. Does anyone in the chat know Rule 72? $72 divided by the rate of return will determine the number of years it takes your money to double. If you have your money in a CD or bank account, which is not even earning 2%, 72 divided by 2, it would take 36 years for your money to double. Does anybody have any idea what the stock market averages annually? 12%. 72 divided by 12, every 6 years, your money will double. If Black boys can sell crack, they can sell IBM, Amazon, and Microsoft. Who's teaching Black boys capitalism? How can you live in a capitalistic country and not teach Black males capitalism? Can anybody tell me what is the wealth gap in America? What is the median wealth for whites in America? What is the median wealth for African Americans in America? Any idea? Well, someone said Blacks have the lowest wealth. I'm looking for something a little bit more quantitative than the lowest. Can someone give me the median wealth for African Americans and the median wealth for whites? For whites, it's $155,000. For African Americans, it's less than $10,000. At some point, Odari, we need to talk about reparations. If we don't want to talk about reparations, then teach our children capitalism so we can close this gap. I believe if we're serious about education, if we're going to be student-centered, then the best way to be student-centered is to help Black youth overcome their greatest problem. and their greatest problem is poverty. 1/3 of the Black community lives below the poverty line, and 52% of Black children live below the poverty line. Who's teaching Black children how to overcome poverty?
Mm. Mm. Y'all with that? Everybody out there? Unfortunately, Dr. Kunjufu, some of us who are the educators teaching the children are living in poverty. It's hard for us to teach what we don't know.
And unfortunately, as you know, in the Bay Area, the salaries for teachers is not commensurate with the rent or mortgages in California.
That's right. That's right.
So some school districts literally have bought housing to give to their teachers at a reasonable rate. I know California.
It's a challenge. These pictures are of the time before. And often what we hear about the pre-Brown educational experience, we get a lot of negativity. No desks, not enough textbooks, not enough materials and resources. And you talked earlier about how some of the challenges that exist currently are contemporary challenges, like whether it's the drug use, whether it's special education, whether it's referrals and IEPs. None of this stuff existed in these small Black schools, these one-room schools, these Black public education pre-1954. So something about this pre-1954 experience is defying kind of what is being said now about the possibility, not just for Black students, but also for the Black educator, for Black teachers.
And these pictures are very insightful, because in no way am I trying to sell poverty. There's a need for adequate funding. You showed the screen earlier. Can you go to that screen on funding?
Mm-hmm.
Non-white school districts get $23 billion less than white districts. And this is in 2022.
Sure.
So Brown versus Topeka didn't close the gap. The gap is actually widening. The problem now in 2022 is not only do we have a $23 billion deficit, we now have a shortage of African-American teachers and principals, and a curriculum that is more Eurocentric than it's ever been. I mean, there are states like Texas and Florida that literally took slavery out of the textbooks. The slavery did not exist. This was simply employment at lower wages. They don't call it slavery anymore.
And the context for that $23 billion spending gap is in the bottom corner of this particular slide, where you can see how public school revenue sources, where they come from. And the primary support that public schools get is from local property taxes. They get state sources. There's very little federal resources. Primarily, schools are funded by local property taxes. And if you keep the property value down, particularly in Black and Brown communities, this is how that gap is created. When the property gap, when the wealth gap, when the median net worth of households, there's such a gap, 141,000 to 11,000, then that results in what the schools have resources to do. That results in what the school's infrastructure looks like, and who gets hired to teach, and what is available to teach. And unfortunately, those schools are overwhelmingly Black and Brown.
And let me reinforce that and ask you a question, Odari. And I'm counting on you to be able to answer this question.
Oh, no.
So I have great confidence in you.
Oh, no.
Based upon what you just said, what would Francis Cress Welsing and Neely Fuller say is the response to your research? What would they say is the main culprit here? What was their famous quote?
They would say white supremacy was the main culprit, but
That's
Even
right. And hold on there. So Francis Welsing and Neely Fuller would say, until you understand white supremacy, everything else will confuse you.
that's right.
So whether it's 1954 and the schools weren't equal, or is it 2022, they will find a way to create an unequal balance because power drives racism.
And that's a little bit about what these bans are about. That's a little bit about politicians saying what can and cannot be taught in schools, parents believing that they can dictate to other parents what their young people should and should not learn in school. And then critically, if you don't have that information at home, if that information isn't on the shelf at home, then these children are truly locked out of a real sense of themselves, any sort of connection to their history, to their ancestry. And all of this is reflected in the work that we do in our programs. It's reflected in the work that happens in our classroom, who the young people are who come into our spaces and what we do with them. And oftentimes, especially in the after school space, a lot of what we do is dictated by what happens in the school space. This is part of the hegemony of schools, that I need you working on homework. I need you to help them with this ditto sheet. I need you to extend the school experience into your after school spaces. And that in and of itself is not providing you with the space to actually counter what Dr. Kunjufu has named a conspiracy. It's not creating the space for you to counter that conspiracy. It's actually making you complicit in that conspiracy.
So tell me, Odari, and in the chat room, how do Asians and the Jewish community and Nigerians, what do they do to offset white supremacy and racism? What's their answer to that? Saturday academies. We may be the only race not only expecting someone else to educate our children, but now we're expecting them to teach us that Imhotep was the father of medicine, that the pyramids were not built in Greece, they were built in Egypt. Can anybody tell me what year the first pyramid was built? Because Hippocrates was born 500 BC, Pythagoras 600 BC. Does anyone have any idea what year were the first pyramids built? Did we learn science from Hippocrates? Did we learn math from Pythagoras to build these pyramids? Did the pyramids come after Hippocrates and Pythagoras or before? And if they came before, approximately what year were they built? Any idea?
You want
Class?
You're looking at like 3200 BC.
Very good. So 2780 BC, the first pyramid was built. And yet now many Black youth, Adari, believe they're better in sports than science, believe they're better in music than math, believe they're better in rap than reading.
And you talk a lot about, and mentioned earlier, the lack of Black male teachers at any level, but especially moving down to the younger grades. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
At the younger grades, it's less than 1%. Nationwide for all grades, it's 2%, 7.9% for African-American teachers, but only 2% are African-American male. What hurts me when I speak on college campuses and I ask the students what are they majoring in, seldom do they tell me they're majoring in education. And when I ask them why, they tell me, Hodari, the children are too bad. Now, if a 19-year-old Black male at Morehouse tells me the Black youth are too bad for them, I wonder what the white female at Georgetown or UC Berkeley feels about our youth. If they're too bad for us, I wonder how white teachers feel about them.
Mm.
Now, there's an excellent program nationwide titled Call Me Mister. It's in 17 states now nationwide. They give grants to encourage Black males to major in education. They bring people like myself and yourself in to motivate these college students to pursue education and understand male learning styles. It's an excellent program. The challenge is we simply don't have enough Black males even in that program. Call Me Mister.
Mm.
Now, you gave a stat earlier. Can you move to that stat showing the benefit of having African-American teachers?
Woo. Mm-hmm.
There it is. So if a child has an African-American teacher, their test scores improve over 30%. There's a decrease in them being placed in special ed, remedial reading, and dropping out. A greater chance they'll be recommended for gifted and talented AP, a greater chance they'll be admitted and graduate from college. There really are benefits, and Hodari, this research shows just having 2 years of Black teachers, just 2 years, is something about having teachers that look like you for just 2 years makes the difference. But this is a luxury for me because remember, I'm now spending almost 3 days of my week primarily working with white female teachers. So I believe as a bid whist player, you have to play the hand that you're dealt. And when I look at the audience, I'm looking at a population 83% white and female. They don't need this kind of research on the benefit of Black teachers. What they need is research showing them what have white female teachers done successfully to educate African-American students. And the 5 major traits white female teachers who've been successful bond with Black students, give them high expectations, understand their learning styles, make the curriculum relevant, and they're excellent at classroom management. Let me translate. They don't let Black boys sleep in their class. They don't let Black boys disengage from the classroom discussion. Nothing hurts me more than to visit classrooms. I have a 19-year-old grandson, and when I visit classrooms, I'm always thinking of him. And it hurts me to see Black boys standing outside the classroom door, in the corner, sleep, on their mobile device. It's as if teachers are encouraging Black boys to disengage from the classroom. It's almost like another form of suspension.
Mm. So you have this great book, 200 plus educational strategies to teach children of color. And you've been kind of sprinkling us with some of those strategies, giving us little windows into a few here and there. Can we just drop some strategies that we know are effective? This is primarily for folks who are not in the classroom day experience, but they're in the post-classroom experience, the after-classroom experience, the paraprofessional classroom experience. What are some educational strategies that have proven to be effective for Black students?
Well, one of them is classroom decor. As you know, Adara, many teachers say, I don't see color. When teachers tell me that, I almost want to slap them because I believe they see color better than anyone. See, the first step is to admit that color exists. The second step is to understand it. And the third step is to appreciate it. Now, when they say they don't see color, they're at level 0, the stage called denial. So one of our solutions here in 200 plus, and there's an earlier book called 100 plus, 1 to 100, and then 101 to 200. Question, are you at level 0, denial? Are you at level 1, admit? Level 2, understand? Level 3, appreciate? So that's one solution. Another one, posters. It is amazing to me, Odari, how teachers can say they don't see color, and yet they have an all-Black student class, and they have a white bulletin board and white library collection. I believe that pictures and posters tell me what you really think about our children. And not only are the pictures Eurocentric in most cases, they are also feminine. So Black boys seldom see a masculine, Afrocentric collection of posters and books in their classrooms. I'll give one more. Research shows you learn best when you're given the opportunity to respond. But some teachers call on some students more than they call on others. And the research shows many teachers call on girls more than they call on boys. They also give more clues to girls to give the correct answer than they do boys. There's also a science to where teachers stand in the classroom. Students that they do not like, they are seldom in close proximity to them. The students that they like, they're closer to them. Let me say this. You can't teach a child you are afraid of. And many teachers are afraid of older Black boys. Many boys lose their innocence around 4th grade. I feel the best way to be effective with students is to respect them, to like them, and ideally to love them. But how many white female teachers honestly love Black male students?
Mm. 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 Okay. I want to get to advice for parents, advice for Black parents who have to drop their children off to these schools or to educators who are ill-equipped to educate them in the way that you're talking about. What advice do you have for parents other than don't drop your kids off?
And that would be the best one, homeschool them first, Saturday schools second, charter schools as well. But if you must deliver them to public schools, research shows, Adari, that teachers respond differently to children when they have seen the parents. So better parents visit the classroom and they monitor teachers. They observe teachers and make suggestions to them. They also call teachers and text them and email them with strategies. They give teachers books that help teachers better understand Afrocentricity and male learning styles. Another suggestion to parents, when I was growing up, it was easy for my parents. The greatest influence on my life was the home, school, church. It is now 2022. In the chat room, what are the 3 or 4 greatest influences on children today? Because it's not the home, it's not the school, it's not the church. What's number 1 now? I saw social media, that's number 1. If you don't do anything else, you need to monitor how your children is moving through Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook, and the rest. What's number 2? The peer group. Thanks, Alexis. There's a science. If you want to find out your children's values, their goals, what they really believe, just look at their selection of their friends. The fruit doesn't fall very far from the tree. If you really want to know your child, look at your child's selection of friends. What's third?
The music.
The music would be third. You need to dissect those rap lyrics. The message is in the music. I want you to play for your children, as Odari mentioned, Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, and Can't Leave Them Alone by Sierra and 50. I want your children to articulate what they've learned from each of those three lyrics. And the fourth one would be video games. So better parents monitor social media, the peer group, the lyrics, and video games. The fourth one, in terms of what recommendations for parents, is the conversation. Can anybody tell me what Sonia Carson did with her two sons? One was an engineer, and the second one was Ben Carson. What was the conversation between Sonia and Ben Carson? What did they talk about?
Science.
They talked about science. They talked about goals. She made him go to the library, 2 books, read 1 per week, write a book report. She created a conversation with Ben about its future. See, I believe children make mistakes when they have nothing to lose. What parents need to do is give their children something they value so much they would not want to lose it. What can we learn from Richard Williams with Serena and Venus? The importance of time on task. Whatever you do most is what you do best. Question: how many hours are Black children spending on social media with their friends, listening to music, watching video, playing video games, watching television, and studying? Ideally speaking, whatever number of hours you're on social media should be the same number of hours that you study. Whatever number of hours you spend with your friends, same amount study. That's what Richard Williams and Sonia Carson taught us with regards to how to rear successful children.
I want to remind you that you can find us online at edutainmentforequity.com and also on our social media platforms. We're using hashtags to collect comments and engagement, but really we want to make sure that you get your question and answer in the Q&A. You can hit in the chat. We want to encourage you, if you have questions, to put them in the Q&A. We also want to leave some extra time for the event so you can get the answers to those questions. Dr. Kunjufu, welcome back. I want to ask you something specific about your latest books. Are you there? Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I want to ask you about your latest books, Parenting Black Girls and Educating Black Girls. And if you just have some insight into some of the challenges that Black girls are experiencing. And I'm asking this particularly because when Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys came out, a lot of the experiences that Black boys were having in the schools were kind of exclusive to Black boys. But now a lot of these experiences are being experienced by Black girls. What do I mean by that? Well, suspension rates used to be extraordinary for Black boys and not so much for Black girls, but now we're seeing suspension and expulsion rates for Black girls those rates are competitive with those with Black boys. We're seeing a criminalization and adultification of Black girls. We're seeing Black girls being assaulted by police in their schoolhouse, in their classroom sometimes. We're seeing Black girls being discriminated against because of their hairstyles, because of the way they talk, because of their peer groups, because of the way they dress. And we're also seeing kind of a loss of the Black educator, Black boys and Black girls. We're seeing less and less Black educators, be they Black men or Black women. And so I know that you've written these 2 new texts to really focus on the issue of Black girls. And I wanted to make sure to have some time where you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, you described the plight of Black girls comprehensively, especially the suspension rate. The suspension rate is actually greater for Black girls than it is for Black males. There's a 5-to-1 ratio between Black girls and white girls being suspended, while there's a 3-to-1 ratio between Black males and white males. And you mentioned the same thing with regards to the arrest rate. So that it's tragic what's happening to our girls. The same thing as it applies to gifted and talented and AP. There's a much higher percentage of white girls who are recommended for AP and gifted and talented than Black girls with the same test scores, same academic performance, but it takes a referral from the teacher to be placed in those two classes. But let me say this in defense of Black girls. I want the listening audience to hear me. Black boys score 16.8 on the ACT. Black females score 17.1. It's only 0.3 of a difference. Black boys 16.8, Black females 17.1. There are 1.4 million Black males in college. How many Black females do you think are in college? With only 0.3 higher on the ACT, you would think the numbers would be very close. It's 1.4 to 2.3 million. There's almost 1 million more Black females in college than there are Black males. How do we explain 1 million more when the ACT scores were so close? That's one question. The second one, how do we explain that Black females have a 25% higher graduation rate at the collegiate level? What's driving the 25%? Let's go further. If an African-American college graduate pursues a graduate program, 80% of the time is going to be the Black female who will pursue a master's or doctorate degree. How do we explain that? This goes back to one of the questions you asked me earlier, Odari, about parenting. Do some mothers raise their daughters and love their sons? Could that explain why some females are more disciplined, more focused, more mature, more responsible, have more grit? Could it be that Black males are not convinced that education is the great equalizer? See, Black girls, for some reason, don't have a problem incurring $50,000 or more in student loan debt. Black males are a little suspicious about that. They're not quite convinced that education pays. Can anybody tell me the latest 3 Black billionaires in Black America? Who are they? The 3 latest Black billionaires. LeBron, that's one. Jay-Z, he was already there.
And Puff Daddy.
And P. Diddy. So our youth, our Black male youth, still don't believe that education is worth going deep in debt for student loan debt at the collegiate level.
So
and the other quick point I want to mention with regards to girls, since 1930, little girls have been starting their menstrual cycle 6 months earlier for every decade since 1930. Little girls now as young as 8 years of age are starting their cycle, able to give birth to a child. I speak at high schools now. I can't tell high school girls from high school teachers. We are the only mothers that send our babies to another mother for milk. Cow's milk develops the body. Your milk develops the brain. Diet is critical.
Okay, Ken, we've got some questions that came in. So let's go with Keisha's question. Can you talk about how to get Black parent engagement in education as well as after-school programs that help our children? Keisha says she finds it difficult to get Black parents to show up. As the children's age and the teenagers, the engagement gets even less.
Well, Keisha, I thought you and I were friends. Why would you ask me a difficult question like that, especially the last part, as the age increases, parental involvement decreases. And yet it really should increase because of social media, the peer group, lyrics, and video games. When I visit schools like in Oakland or other parts of the country, and I try to stay at least 2 days, school A only had 10 parents. School B, same neighborhood, had over 100. Now remember, I'm always looking for success models. What did school B do that school A did not do? Well, they respected parents. They let the parents choose the day, the time, the topic, the location, and they also provided food, a door prize, transportation, daycare, and had their children perform. There are ways to attract parents. We even give schools a list of these marketing techniques to attract parents. And Odari, I was at one school, I was really disappointed. The school provided the meal before I spoke. What do you think happened? The Negroes ate all the chicken, the biscuits, the potato salad, and left before I said a word. The meal and the performance of their students has to come after the speaker, not before. And if you want fathers to be there, then provide workshops on how to find a job, how to expunge their record, blue collar skills, improving their credit score, tangible skills and ideas like that, fathers are interested in. They don't want to just sit around a table drinking coffee and eating donuts. They want their records expunged.
Yeah, I think, Keisha, I think that speaks to just understanding the needs and conditions of the parents and of the family, and recognizing that those meetings are not one way. They're not just about information about the child, that anything that's impacting the child is impacting the whole family. It's impacting the parents as well. And so it's important to have a sense of, well, what are the needs of the family? You know, I think that sometimes our expectations are centered around what's convenient for white working people. So it's convenient to meet at 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, at 7 o'clock. Maybe that's convenient for some people, and for other parents, it's not. So really having an understanding of the conditions that your children are experiencing, the realities of their lives, so that you can be responsive to that. And schools, and even in our after school programs, we're here to provide service to families and to communities. But oftentimes I think we're positioned as if we're providing service for the institutions that we partner with or collaborate with. We provide service for the school rather than for the families who attend that, and the students who attend that school. So it's just something to think about. How do we shift our practice to make it more convenient and speak directly to the needs and challenges that our families are experiencing? Great question. Lewis Jefferson. Lewis, you have a lot of questions. I'm not sure really which one to go with, but I'm going to try. Out of all Africans here in America with terminal degrees, the terminal degree program most achieved is in education. Why is it that our top leaders in education have not instituted a public educational curricula, textbooks, and lesson plans that are Afrocentric, anti-colonial, and anti-capitalist?
I think Carter G. Woodson answered it best. Educated to do what? For most of us, we've been educated to work for them. Schools teach more than 3 R's. They teach values. And there are very few with terminal degrees that can give you the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba and the 7 cardinal virtues of Ma'at. In the chat room, I'd like for you right quick to write down the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba and the 7 cardinal virtues of Ma'at. And then I want you to give those to someone with a terminal degree, so he or she will learn them as well. I know our time is running out. Any other questions?
Other questions? Lewis also asked, have you considered that young sisters don't have the same illusion of sports as an opportunity for monetary success?
Excellent point, and it's a real tragedy that the WNBA pays less than $100,000 a year. That's the average salary, less than $100,000. And the average NBA salary is $5 million, and some make far more than that per year. So it's really unfortunate. Sexism is alive and well in America. How many of us who really love the game will ever watch a WNBA game? I'm a tennis player. That's why I live in Phoenix, Arizona now, and try to play tennis every day that I'm not speaking. And it's nice to know that at least in tennis, the Serena, Venus, Coco, Madison Keys, Sloane, and numerous others are paid good money to play tennis. You don't see that in the WNBA.
I think also when we talk about who supports the WNBA or who supports those athletes, that's a point too. It's like we have posters of LeBron James on our wall or posters of Steph Curry, but do we have posters of Lisa Leslie on our wall or any of the WNBA stars who perform in the field? So are we even creating that as sort of a path of inspiration for our young people, our young girls? Is really something to think about. And quite frankly, the number of young Black athletes has been increasing. Young Black female athletes has been increasing. It's increased, 50-fold with the WNBA by itself, but it's also, as Dr. Kunjufu mentioned, increased in tennis. It's increased in other sports as well. Like, it's not just limited to that. So it's just something to consider. How do we elevate that as some type of physical engagement for our girls is something to think about. I'd like to get to your
I'm sorry, right quick. I just want to commend Venus Williams because she fought sexism in tennis where the males were paid twice as much as the females. And because she was reared by Richard Williams, she demanded fairness. And she was able to achieve that, where in the Grand Slams, women and men are paid the same amount of money when they earn Grand Slam victories.
So can we talk a little bit about the COVID-19 curriculum? Can you shed a little light on this this curriculum that you created?
Well, COVID-19 was and is deadly, and we could have a whole workshop on why it was more detrimental in the Black community. COVID-19 exposed our bad diet. I want to juxtapose the soul food diet with the Daniel diet. The soul food diet is killing us literally. The Daniel diet is full of life, vitality, and it's a better diet for us to consume. But if we thought COVID-19 was deadly, the Ma'afa, the Black slave experience, going through the door of no return, was more catastrophic. Now, most of us know how many Jews died in Germany. But question, how many Africans died in the slave trade, the Ma'afa, went through the door of no return in America and the Caribbean? How do we know how many Jews died in another country and not how many Africans died in our country? So the book grades 3 through 5, and there's one for 6th through 12th grade, describes the Ma'afa. We literally lost our minds when we went through the door of no return. And psychologists suggest the only way to heal from that experience is to revisit the crime. Until we go back through the door of no return, we will continue to suffer from post-traumatic slavery disorder.
Okay, we got time for one more question. Somebody going to throw it out there while you're working on the question. I just want to drop this thing. Please fill out the evaluation form. The link is in the chat. It helps our event get better. It helps us improve. We have 5 more of these coming up in the next 6 months or so. And so your feedback means a lot to us. And we'd love to hear you, share your perspective on what you've experienced in this event. Our last question is coming from, I guess it's coming from Lewis, but it's also coming from Candace. So I got it doubled up, which means that it must be an important question to ask. Isn't colonialism and capitalism also part of the destruction of Black boys as well as Africans, period?
Yes.
And I'd like to add to that because sometimes when we think of colonialism, we think like it's 50 years in the past, and when we think of capitalism and sort of slavery, we think of that like in 200, 300 years in the past. And so I'd like to extend that to say, how is colonialism and capitalism part of the destruction of Black boys today and African people today?
And you heard me mention earlier, how can you live in a capitalistic country and not teach Black children, especially Black males, capitalism? Unfortunately, our youth are being marginalized. For example, in terms of the NBA and sports stars, most of them retire in debt. Rappers, even during their career, are in debt. And drug dealers, I don't know one drug dealer who sold drugs, retired, and now living off a pension. 3 things happen to drug dealers. They either use, they go to jail, or they die. We need to teach our children a better form of capitalism where the profit would not go to just one individual. It would go back into CB schools, Saturday academies, rites of passage programs, mentoring programs, single gender schools.
I love it. So I want to put these books back up. This is just a small slice of the 40 books that this man has written on this subject. This was just like, we only did 90-something minutes on so much that could have been said, so much that we could be talking about. We want to encourage you to go to AfricanAmericanImages.com and purchase these books. Don't get these books at Amazon. Get these books at AfricanAmericanImages.com, which is the organization that was founded and is run by Dr. Juwanza Kunjufu. Get his books from him, not from the distributors, all right? This is, again, just a slice of those books, and I'm encouraging you to get a book today and to start your reading today, yes? Our next Educating the Black Child will be on February 2nd. It's a makeup. It's a makeup. We have a premier scholar in culturally responsive teaching, Dr. Goldie Muhammad. We're excited to welcome her into the space. Bring your questions, bring your staff, bring your people, because Goldie be dropping it also. Goldie is known to drop it as well. Educating the Black Child is brought to you by the Department of Children, Youth, and Their Families in collaboration with Edutainment for Equity. And as a culmination of our 10-year anniversary, we'll be in conversation with the renowned author and public intellectual Ta-Nehisi Coates in a free conversation about the future of anti-Blackness and institutional racism. You're all invited, but you got to hit the website to register. And I believe registration for this opened yesterday. So get your seat. It's a virtual conversation, very similar to this. So you won't have to leave your home or your job to come. And we're encouraging you to bring your staff with you, to bring your folks with you, to invite people, to share that this thing is happening, because we want to get as many people in the audience as possible to hear this exclusive opportunity in this conversation with Ta-Nehisi Coates. We want to again thank Dr. Kunjufu for being here with us. And I'm just going to say now, I'm going to invite you to come back. Like, we're going to figure out a way to get you back in the next 6 months, because we talked a lot about the educators and teachers, Now I want to have a whole conversation about parents and how we as parents can just be more effective in not only modeling the education that we want our children to experience, but also in interacting with the people who are educating our children. What are the right questions to ask? What are the right things to expect? What are the right things to demand, et cetera? And so we'll work with Dr. Kunjufu to bring him back for round 2 of this conversation. In the meantime, visit edutainmentforequity.com, get your tickets for the upcoming event, subscribe, join us, man, join us. We'd love to see you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us. And with that, we are out.